Today, I'm Jayson Padao. For today's video, I'm going to discuss about my reflection on the prelims topic. First is the Laguna copper plate. Laguna copper plate is known evidence for written literature and the history of the Philippines. The Laguna copper plate inscription is a sheet of copper metal with ancient writing discovered in the province of Laguna in 1989. This artifact was discovered during dredging operations with a mechanical conveyor in the Lumbang River, which is located in the province of Laguna. Anton Postma, a Dutch specialist in ancient Philippine scripts and Mangyan, written who had lived in the Philippines for a long time, translated the text that became known as the Laguna copper plate inscription in 1990. The inscription was written in the Old Malay, using the Kawi script with influence from the Sanskrit and Old Havanese. Next is duties of the Katipunan of the Sons of the People. This first move toward independence began on July 7, 1892, when the Katipunan was established by Andres Bonifacio. This was the result of the failure of the reform movement in Spain, in which Filipinos attempted to demand reforms for the Philippines from the Spanish government. The kataas-taasang galang-galangang katipunan ng mga anak ng bayan or KKK was our revolutionary society that espoused independence and freedom for the Philippines through force of arms. Its main objective was separation of the Filipino as citizens of their own nation once independence was achieved. Next is the Manunggol jar. Manunggol jar are remains of Tabon man, which is known as a first man in the Philippines, is found in the pottery called Manunggol jar that was excavated from a Neolithic burial site in Manunggol Cave of Tabon Caves at Lipon Point at Palawan on 190 to 710 BC. This jar is known as a secondary burial jar of a people living in that cave. This jar has several designs which signifies different meanings. The upper portion of the jar as well as the cover incised with the cavalier scroll designs and painted with a natural iron or hematite. On top of the jar, cover or lid is about with two human figures representing two souls on a voyage to the afterlife. The inside of the jar contains human bones coated with a red paint and numerous bracelets. Next is an introduction to Philippine Histography. Philippines, the dominance of the colonial discourse, has challenged Filipino historians to write the history of the Philippines using a discourse that will privilege the Filipinos. The period 1950s to early 90s was considered as a great era in the history of the Philippine historical writing, for it produced dedicated Filipino historians who tried their best to redirect the writing of Philippine history. In accordance to the historians who work hard to come up with historical writings that can be used for a better understanding of the Philippines and its people and together with their foreign counterparts. Filipino historians produce scholarly works explaining the Philippines and its people. Many issues that happen during histography that we experience within the following: economic issue, social issue, political issue. Next is history of the Philippine Island. One of the discovered in this island of the Philippines, which is known for being hospitable towards visitors. The people on this island begins with just few native black people found in Luzon. They are strong, skillful, and creative. Planting crops and hunting is their primary source of food. They transfer from one place to another according to the season. Natives condition living in this island are divided into three stages. The sheep, which is in the present days, are called mayor. The Timagwas, which is the descendants of such chief, and their relatives and and the last is the slaves. Treatment towards people in those days are not equal, as it is abuse of their way of living that is divided according to its rank and wealth. The slave has the lowest rank among all. These slaves works for their master, as did likewise the children born on them. Talking about the law, crimes were punished by request of the aggrieved parties, especially where theft punished with greater severity, the robbers being slaves or sometimes put to death, as well as the chef, as well as the insulting words, especially when talking to the Philippine History Search Book and the Astronesian's Historical and Comparative Perspective. The term of Astronesian contextually refers to a population group present in Southeast Asia or Oceania who speaks or had ancestors who spoke one of the Astronesian languages, apart from the Polynesian people of Oceania. The Astronesian people include Taiwanese, Aborigines, the majority ethnic groups of the East Timor. Indonesia and Malaysia, there had been several theories that posit the Astronesians as the origin of the Philippines. Bellwood's National University professor Peter Bellwood, or Astronesian diffusion theory, out of Taiwan, hypothesis mainland origin hypothesis rather than believing that Australoids were the ancestor of the Filipino race. Professor Bellwood argued that Astronesians were the roots of the Filipino inhabiting most of the Asian territories today. Next is the first people of Sulu. A story entitled In Tao Nakauna. The first people Sulu was documented by the Madu Damsani of the Coordinated Investigation of Sulu Culture. Efren Alawi of the Institute of the Philippine Culture of the Ateneo de Manila and Gerard Rection, the director of CIS, it happened that a war erupted in a country nearby. As the war ended, only 5 men managed to escape. 2 of them were tall with long noses, and the 3 others were quite short. These 5 left their country and landed at one end of our island of Holo, where until the new people live. Here they established their residence, where occasionally they herd a saw wild horse and wild carabao for food. They gathered what they found from the forest. Next is Insurrection by the Filipinos in the 17th century. The opening of the Philippines to world trade rapidly developed the Philippine economy. Everyday Filipinos also benefited from the new economy with a rapid increase in demand for labor and availability of business opportunities. In the early 19th century, the Suez Canal was opened, which made the Philippines easier to reach from Spain. The small increase of the peninsulas tend the secularization of Filipino churches. Instead of first the Creoles, known locally as insulars or islanders, displaced from the government positions by the peninsulas, whom the native insulars regarded as foreigners. The insulars had become increasingly Filipino and called themselves Los Hijos del País, or son of the country. Among the early proponents of Filipino nationalism were the insulars Padre Pedro Palaez and Padre Jose Burgos and Joaquin Padro de Tavera. The last is the causes of the distress of the Philippines. Almost barren tree with rotten fruits. That is how the Philippine educational system is often described. On the roots of the tree are the many factors and forces that shape the Filipino educational system, include but not limited to colonization history, corrupt political system, and poverty. On the branches are the problems visiting our educational system: lack of teachers, lack of resources, lack of standards, etc. Indeed, the Philippines educational system is besieged with so many problems. However, there is hope in reforming the system, and there is a clamor for reforms within the education, bureaucracy, and culture and its leadership. There is also the call to reform the curriculum and set standards, and there is the call to improve teacher, educational, and training. Thank you.